So, very good morning to all of you STEM researchers. Today, we are meeting as the last delivered lecture from my end. Today, we'll be looking at research presentations. Now, we've been exploring through the research writing process, the language engineering, prompt engineering, the syntax engineering, and all that. And today, we'll be looking at how such a write-up, such a craft of research could be optimally presented, harnessing all the different types of audiences that you're going to be confronted with. So with that, we'll be concluding the entire delivery from my end, but it does not mean that we are not meeting next Thursday and Saturday. We will be meeting next Thursday and Saturday as well. But our meeting on next Thursday and Saturday is not for me to deliver any new stuff, but for you all to do your presentations on next Thursday and Saturday. So that at the very onset of today's lecture, I have to inform you based on the homework or rather assignment that I uploaded this morning, based on what we've done so far from last week particularly, and based on your submission of your title, abstract, and conclusion, I'll be expecting you all to be prepared for a 1 slide, 1 minute thesis exploration of the 3 components that you're submitting as your assignment. So you can read the whole assignment description clearly. The already uploaded assignment description simply covers your submission of the text document, that is the topic, abstract, and conclusion parts. And what I'm expecting you to do is to get the content that you presented in that submission into 1 slide, 1 slide. Keep in mind, 1 slide, and do a 1 minute presentation on what you have got there, right? So I'm planning this to be done physically, probably next Saturday in FGS. So that you'll be coming there just for 1 minute thesis presentation. And we panel of judges will be simply evaluating on you, on your performance and on your content and on your clarity on presentation. So in that way, we are going to conclude the module. I'm asking from you at the very beginning whether there is any issue with what I'm planning as the final assessment. It's not a sort of a final assessment. It's going to be the only physical on-time delivery assessment, whereas the rest of the assessments were typically in-class assessments. We've taken lots starting from the workshop and then some other submissions. And this week we'll be having another submission, on which the deadline is 12th February. And we'll be doing the presentation as the last component. So we have 4 components of assessment, all in-class submissions, the workshop submission, the submission on the last week assignment, which is uploaded right now, and the 1 minute thesis presentation. Friends, are you angry with me? Or how do you feel it? Okay, you can give your comments and feedback towards the session end or rather towards any point that you feel like comfortable. I sense that only half of the class is there, now only 31, which means nearly the half of the class, but I'm sure that I'll be trying my best to upload all the recordings by tonight. So you have all the recordings, all the synopsis, all the slides, and you have everything on Moodle. Those who have made delays or rather have made excuses on submission, I'll be opening all the submissions except for the workshop for one more week so that those who were not able to submit can submit them. But I know who submitted on time and who submitted later. Late submissions will be receiving a penalty, but still you are given a chance to submit and get your homework done. So that's how it is planned. Don't think that I'm becoming rude towards the end. No, not being rude. Actually, we want to make it into a classy conclusion. I'm waiting to listen to some of you if you have any concerns, just for 1 minute.
So is it 1 minute thesis presentation?
Yes, the tradition is 3 minutes
3
presentation,
minutes.
3 minute thesis, but I'm
Okay,
not
sir.
going to 3 minute, but I'm
Sir.
going to do 1 minute thesis. That is the challenge in this particular,
Oh, okay.
what do you call, in this particular module. Because 3MT is a, it's a trademarked license. I cannot dare use the 3MT thing as part of our modules convention. So I'm simply adapting that into 1 minute thesis. So you have to think how to plan all that, right? Well, any other questions? Did I make all your
So
life a
you
mess?
will discuss that how to do that for 1 minute, 3 minute presentation. We are going to discuss today, sir.
Well, I think we can discuss that thing on Thursday with maybe Thursday. Once you're done with your submission of this week's whole work, that is, your title, abstract, and conclusion. Once you're done with that submission, on Thursday when we are meeting, we can discuss about any issue related to the final assessment that we are going to take on next Saturday. Today we'll be finishing on
Okay.
the oral tradition, or rather the oral presentation skills. That is the central idea of whole session today. So we'll be discussing, Subhashini, the issues
Okay, sir.
related to the final thing on next Thursday once you're done with your submissions of written text. Any questions? Before I move through the slides for today's discussion? Did I put you all in a hot plate? It seems. මවගලන් අමාරුවක දැම්මද නෑ මේක අමාරුවේ දැමිල්ලක් නෙමෙයි. I actually want to get you all fine-tuned and polished. I'm not the sort of a person who is simply penalizing anyone for any excuse that you produce. For everyone, I'm a generous marker because I know that your performance just indicate uh, a fraction, or rather, let me say, just a cross section of your entire ability. Therefore, I'm not going to simply penalize you on anything. You are all reserved with the best possible mark given. You just have to make your presence and convince me that you are up to that standard. That's it. Any questions, friends? I sense a bit of feedback. Is it because someone kept their mic on? Maybe. Lakshita, have you got anything to ask? All right. Shall we go ahead with today's session? Give me a thumbs up if you like me to go ahead with today's session without pondering much about the assessment, which is a little hectic, yes, as it seems. No, I'm not going to actually put you all in a hot plate, but just to, alarm you very well in advance what we are going to do, right? Well, so with that, with the acknowledgement of Ms. Ashwini Karunaratne, who prepared all this material, let me begin today's session. Research presentations, strategy, structure, and story. Up to now, we actually have navigated through the entire craft of writing your research. You are the one who do the research. We were the one who happened to be guiding you through articulating your research in a written text form. That's what we were doing so far. Today, we'll be looking at how such a nicely crafted research by you with lots of your energy and time investment, which is written in a very polite, precise, and very standard format as we navigated so far. Today, we'll be spotlighting on how to do this in a verbal, visual presentation that you're going to do in front of a forum or an audience. And we know presentations, when it comes to research, appear in not typically towards the end of a research. It is a continuing process where, even before you begin the research at the level of presentation, at the level of proposal defense, you have to start with proposal presentation. And then if you're presenting it to fund agencies and, other scholarship agencies, you have to once again provide them with status updates, and later on defense of the success or presentation, and perhaps towards the end, the complete research presentation. And on top of that, there are symposium presentations, 3-minute thesis, and of course, defense of your thesis at the end of the day. All these episodes are typically the instances where you do presentations on what you have done in the laboratory in the research. So let's look at, through this comprehensive guide, how can you communicate your science to a bigger audience. Today, before the session, I actually happened to upload 2 materials. First thing is the slide. The second thing is the complete guide that I based myself on preparing this presentation speech. So quite simply, that is a very comprehensive and very attractive guide. I have uploaded it to the Moodle. You all can refer to it before you proceed to any presentation that might be coming on your way in future. So it's by Mark Weeks, research presentations, just communication. That's the article that I am referring when it comes to this session today. So friends, with that, let's move on and see what we have got here to discuss in today's session. Now, when it comes to presentations, remember, the presentation is not quite simply a defense or a performance or a final test. Remember, it's also part of just communication. Why communication? You're doing research to create an impact on a human issue, or rather to solve a human issue and to bring results back to the human. So that when you navigate through the research field, you are doing communication with the existing research. And when you're negotiating your methodology, you do research, once again, communication comes into play. And when you pause yourself in the fund presentation or rather proposal presentation, once again, you are convincing to experts or other industry professionals on what you're going to do in this research. That's also communication. And when you're done with your research, when you bring the results to the audience, particularly to the human, and to the fund agencies, your supervisors, your reviewers, and all that, once again, that is also communication. So that when you think of a presentation, the core philosophy that you have to rely on is to get rid from this myth of it is an oral examination. It's a defense. It's a performance. Don't think your presentation as a performance or an examination or a final point of your research or whatever episode. Remember that a presentation at any point is a point where you get chance to communicate on what you are doing to your stakeholders involved in your research, as well as it's a chance, added chance given to you to speak on behalf of you on top of what you have written in the proposal or the report submitted. So you should not take presentation as a final performance or an oral examination. It's a point where you get a chance to be in front of the readers or the audience and provide them with your write-up and given a chance for you to speak out loud on behalf of you. And at the same time, it's a lively platform where you receive feedback from presentation evaluations, your stakeholders, perhaps the audience. They'll be providing you feedback so that it is a constructive moment given to you to improve yourself, to fine-tune your research trajectory, and of course, to enhance the quality of your research. So this is the core philosophy of any presentation that you're going to do. Even in a conference presentation, what you're doing is the same. You are giving an update to a field experts, field fellows of your own research section or rather realm, and you are presenting them what you're doing, and they provide you reviewers, colloquium specialists, and your feed audience. They are giving you feedback on what you have done, right? So it's not a performance. It's not an oral examination. It's a point of contact, point of communication where you get a chance to be in touch with the other partners of your research, right? I wish that you get the point that you have to, in the very first place, get rid from this myth of presentation is a performance. It's not. It's actually a constructive, live moment of truth where you communicate, update your stakeholders on what you're doing, and they update on what you have done, looking at how you have written it, how you have presented it, and all that. Did you get the point, my dear friends? We have to overcome this myth to make presentation a lively experience, to make any research presentation a lively and, of course, engaging experience. You have to get rid from this myth. Are you there, my dear friends? It's actually a
Yes.
helpful reality. Thank you. A presentation is typically a collaboration. It's about the research, and keep in mind that it's about your research and it's not about you, right? The goal of your presentation is to share your ideas and receive feedback and improve your work. So in the very onset, get rid from all the burdens in your mind that presentation is, it's going to be an assessment of performance or an oral examination. No, it is not. It is a point of collaboration. Well, with that, we'll be moving. Now think, why are you presenting somewhere? If you happen to ask, or rather if somebody happens to ask from you, why are you presenting in this conference? Why are you presenting here in this proposal defense? Why are you presenting here in front of these donors who are going to provide you with grants for your research? You should be able to answer beyond, my professor told me to do a presentation, right? So ask from yourself, what is the actual altruistic purpose of your presentation? So it's actually a point where three things happen. First thing is you develop in the sense, your presentations help develop and improve research itself. Yes, because it's a point where you sum up all what you have done up to now and all what you are going to do in future in a snapshot, developing, resynthesizing and recalibrating your own story of research. So it's a point of developing yourself. Secondly, presenting is part of the research cycle. It's not just the final product. So that presenting what you have done so far is part and parcel of the whole process of research. So it's a process. So your process is also optimized with your presentation. And the third and most important thing is you, with your presentation, begins a collaboration. Collaboration with whom? You're going to make a collaboration with new partners, new reviewers, new audience, funding opportunities, scholarship opportunities, maybe perhaps upgrading opportunities. Imagine that you initially registered for MSc, and with your presentation, you may be able to, or rather, you may be doing it to convince your supervisor and the rest of the board of studies to tell that you are quite competent to extend your research into an MPhil. Perhaps an MPhil candidate might be doing it to advance the research into a PhD. So it's a place where you get the chance to collaborate. So ask why you are doing this presentation. That is to ensure that, when you realize that your presentation is any of these three conditions met together, it's an opportunity for develop, it's part and parcel of the ongoing research process, and of course you realize it as a point where you get a chance to collaborate. With all these three aspects in mind, you realize that presentation itself is part of the research. Yes, indeed. So let's look at the research cycle. You can be presenting at any stage of your journey. Depending on the stage in which you are doing your presentation, your goal is different, right? Depending on the stage where you are doing it, you have a different goal. At the proposal end, you are simply presenting a plan to get approval. Maybe for you to process with the research topic, research plan, and research methodology, maybe to ask for funding approval or rather ask for approval of your research idea. And then there can be other instances where you will be presenting to your stakeholders the progress that you have made so far, right? So it's about presenting something partial, right? You have some data and you also need guidance from your stakeholders. So that is the typical nature of a progress presentation. And there can be presentations where you, yes, of course, toward the end of your research, at the completion of your thesis, at the completion of your master's or PhD thesis, you announce your results to the community. And perhaps in all those instances, presentation is actually an iterative cycle where you get feedback to move, optimize, nurture your own research, further fine-tuning it to fit into the demand of the knowledge society. So remember that this is a research cycle. Everywhere in your research cycle, you have to be prepared to do presentations at the proposal lens, progress lens, and completion lens. Yeah, perhaps doing presentation is part and parcel of research. So in each stage, take the feedback that you receive, because it is the only place where you are given chance to speak, and on what you have done and on what you are going to do, they are going to evaluate, they are going to give their fullest concentration. I mean, the attendees, the reviewers, the judges of your presentation are going to give full attention to what you say and what you have written. And they are, let me say, the super duper opportunities of receiving very well tailored feedback on what you are doing. So never ever think presentation as what? As a burden, as a point where you should mess your things up. but consider it as a place where you get a chance to correct yourself, fine-tune yourself, to improve your research, and of course, to give someone who is not involved in your research a fuller attention to your research and receive their feedback. So these attitudes are must for you to develop as a presenter in your research. Well, let me ask a follow-up question. Now we have about 40 plus our STEM researchers here on this forum. What is my question? You had an initial conception about what is a presentation. I know that it's typically a burdensome feeling, a hectic feeling, a complicated feeling. But in these couple of slides, I happen to negotiate with you right now. Now, presentation is not such a place. It's a different place where you get lots of opportunities. Now, in one sentence, send me in feedback chat how you now feel a presentation is. Do you have a better, different attitude towards presentation right now? If you have such new attitude, tell me what is your new attitude. Just one sentence, I'm giving you 3 minutes to think of it, type it out, and send it here in your chat. I think you're working on it, right? Thank you, Aslam, for beginning. Thank you, Rangana. So these attitudes typically alter your mood, certainly. And when you are in a very vibrant mode, you're going to do your thing much more perfectly than you take it as a burden. Thank you, Aslam and Rangana, for starting the dialogue. Yes, Danisha. Yes. Yes. It's an opportunity or a gateway kept for you in different iterations or other different steps of your research to convince the other people of what you're doing. Yes, Chamath. It's a forum where your ideas are given highlight and others are giving you feedback on what you're doing. Perfect. Thank you, Subhashini. Danisha, yes. Perfect, Dazun. Yes, you should be converting yourself, your feelings from feeling of being judged to feeling of supported, or quite simply, feeling of, it's about getting inputs for your study. Yes. Thank you, Ayani. Indeed, it's an opportunity gifted to you. Now, one of these transformations that you actually happen to have throughout our discussion is the biggest achievement I had, because in research communication, we can teach and prescribe lots of things. But my intention and my team's intention from the beginning was not to guide you through research process, but to actually release you from, thank you, Dharani. Yeah, release you from all the burdensome feelings you all had and enlightening you on what? The ease and opportunities embedded in each space of your research. Now here we are coming to the last. Thank you, Pramod. And thank you, Sashini. Yes. It's indeed a golden opportunity, because I like that idea, golden opportunity, because no one cares what you're doing. But in a presentation, everyone in the audience is going to be really, really concentrated on what you're going to do. So you cannot get that attention elsewhere, right? So it's a golden, golden opportunity. Thank you for all those who have sent your views. This attitudinal transition is actually the biggest thing that we expect in this course, because here, Gamage, you say nervous at first, but a kind of opportunity and a place for improvement. Yes, this is what we are intending here. This is our purpose here. Sachini, yes. Yeah. Presentations are often, it brings awkward feelings, but still, as you know, that it's going to be a place where you get opportunities to improve, opportunities to funding, opportunities to upgrade. There are lots of opportunities coming in with presentation. Therefore, take it as the so-called golden opportunity. Thank you, Dilina. Yeah, it's a way of perfecting your research. Well, thank you for all those who have sent and those who are going to send their views in future minutes. So let's move on to next topic. Before you go into your presentation craft, like you are doing it in your writing as well, you have to start with analyzing your audience. Thank you, Nipuni. So now this particular slide and its content is going to be really, really, really key in the whole dialogue we are engaged in. What's it? You have to know the players around you, right? So there are 3 players involved in research. Now you are your lab, your team, your research assistants, your supervisor. They are called the in-field stakeholders of your research. What do you call in-field? What do you call in-field? Thank you, Nipuni, for your response. And thank you, Jananga, for your response as well. What is in-field? Those who typically meet up, discuss, improve, collect data, and fine-tune the research, do know 24/7 what you all are doing. So those people involved as stakeholders in your research are identified as in-field stakeholders of your presentation, or rather in your research. They know your jargon, they know your variables, they know what is your dependent variable, what is your independent variable, on which limitations you are working on, and what are your objectives. They know all in all everything, perhaps. This in-field mentality and in-field sensation is actually making lots of troubles when you're presenting it to the others, because you are an in-field stakeholder. And in a presentation panel, not only the in-field stakeholders are involved, but also lots of others are coming in. Just look at the second point, midfield. Now, within your department, within your board of studies, within the faculty of graduate studies, and within the industry experts who are time to time communicating with you, maybe knowing the fact that you are doing a research, impactful to industry where they are involved in. They share some of your concepts, but they are not 24/7 100% updated on your jargon, on your variables, on your what and what not of the research. We have to identify those people as midfield stakeholders, right? So we have navigated through two fields. The infield, where everyone knows everyone else's matters, so they know the what and what not of research. There is a midfield who knows something in the sense they have a notion that you are doing a research. They have some idea, but not a fuller idea like you and your infield team has. And the next team is indeed the outfield. The faculty, the funding institutes, the public, perhaps the research journalists who are going to report what you are presenting, perhaps just a random audience member. So they actually are the outfield stakeholders. They have very low understanding of what you are doing there. So identify your audience in these three spectrums: the infield, the midfield, and the outfield. One of the fatal mistakes that you might be doing in your research presentation could be you fail to treat outfielders because you feel yourself as an infielder, and your accommodation of outfielders' understanding, or rather cognitive exercise in your presentation, is going to be low, so that you become a failure. We assume often midfield and outfield, we assume them as someone known to us, someone who are actually aware of what we are doing here in the research and in the laboratory and in our field. Do not do that fatal mistake. Identify the three fields: infield, midfield, and the outfield. And remember that you are communicating with all the three fields, so that your communication should actually bridge without any gap between what you intend to tell and what you intend them to understand. Got the point? Did I make any aha moment? Any thinking of, oh my God, yes, it is? Did you get any of such signs after discussing this little fact with you? If you have got such an idea after reading the whole thing, give me any emotion you like. Maybe a thumbs up, maybe a heart, maybe anything, or a thumbs down, or whatever, so that I know that you got something. I want your response. Thank you. Thank you. So this distinguishing between the different fields in, mid, and outfield is the success, that makes the success of your presentation, and that actually reduces making fatal mistakes in your presentation. Well, let's move on and see what I have got to share with you. So when you're filling this gap, excuse me, I'm sorry. When you're feeding these three fields, infield, midfield, and the outfield, there involves a silent war between what and what? Specialization and common sense. Now, some of the infield people are specialized. Some of the outfield people are, outfield people, they are actually coming with a common sense, but they do not have a proper sense of what you're doing. So that you have to struggle through this silent war of presenting between specialized detail to common sense articulation of it. Researchers actually oftentimes overestimate how much the audience might be understanding you. You, being a person coming from infield, knows everything about your research, but the partakers of your research in the presentation, simply the audience, they do not know much as you do know. So you have to keep this thing in your mind. So there is a strategy to overcome this gap. What is it? Explain the real world context first to bridge the gap. Start your presentation explaining the real world context first, so that this bridge between the infield and outfield could be easily and very smoothly harnessed. So let's see how could they be done. Now, Edward T. Hall actually talks about something called cultural context of research communication. Now, in your communication of research, whether the audience, whether the people who are involved in your presentation, are they culturally sensitive or insensitive? Now, one thing, if you're presenting, we are coming from an Asian background, and we often do present things to Asian communities like, China, first, one of the leading stakeholders of our research, perhaps Japan, Korea, India, and perhaps Middle East countries, where research and innovation often happens. If you're presenting to such an audience, keep in mind that these contexts are actually culturally high sensitive. They actually respond to shared backgrounds. They actually do like to take a breath with the air of commonalities between the presenter and them. So keep in mind that Asian, typically the Japanese, Chinese, Arabian, particularly the Middle East, and of course, Indian and Vietnamese, Korean contexts are highly culturally sensitive. But if you're presenting your research to the wider European and of course, Western context, where you are presenting in USA, Germany, international science forums, and of course, you are taking it to UK or rather European community, they actually do not love our context, which are rich with cultural aspects. They require direct, explicit, specific detail of your research only, not the context and cultural sensitivities. But if you're presenting to the Asian and the so-called our region people, we actually do highlight the commonalities, the shared background and implicit meanings, giving a good breathe. We feel like, we are coming from same background. We have to give that sense when you're presenting to your region. But when you're taking it to the bigger context, West, Europe and USA involved, keep in mind that you have to nullify, you have to reduce your cultural affiliation in your research. You have to make it much more universal, right? So I am giving this very sensitive information based on Edward Hall's findings. And of course, I'm giving you all this because we believe that you people are bringing your research into a wider audience, from regional talks to an international desk of forums where you present your findings. Well, with that, we'll be moving on to keep these things not as what we call blueprint, but these notions typically help you best craft your presentation to fit the audience, bridging the infield, midfield, and outfield gap. Well, so let's look at an international strategy first. Fit into the wider, bigger international audience, including USA, UK, and the wider European context. The golden rule is English-speaking research environments are generally low context. Low context in the sense they are less sensitive to your cultural backgrounds. For them, when you are speaking to them, keep in mind that you speak directly, right? Never ever guess your audience to be known to you. So don't leave a gap between your infield expertise and their outfield non-familiarity with your topic, right? Make sure that your meaning convince them nuance, give them a nuanced understanding that you properly communicated. I often cite this as crystal clear communication. So you typically, when you're speaking to the international audience, you have to speak directly, right? Do not ever expect your audience know anything. Never guess. They do not know. They know nothing typically. The second aspect is be explicit. When you state your conclusions, state them clearly. Don't try to hint them, or rather, don't try to wrap it in other mockeries like, garnishes. Just explicitly speak of your conclusions. And in your communication, make sure that you prioritize clarity. When you come into clarity, remember, making simple the ideas that you present in a single sentence is much more the reason of, or rather much more the formula of clarity. When you put things in more complex sentences, in much more lengthy expressions, what happens is it creates complexity, right? The idea is that a single person is, you cannot find equally intelligent people, right? Clarity means you are communicating clearly. To make it clear, split your message into simpler segments and put them in simpler sentences, in clear data, in clear words, in correctly chosen verbs and nouns. Communicate your idea to the audience there where you prioritize clarity. So that is about the culturally low context, wider international community golden rule, and what this community expect from you. The audience desire is, they are typically busy, tired, and they want to learn quickly. They are like detectives. They are waiting for you to articulate just the relevant information alone, not the beating around bushes, right? I could not give an applause to Srimani's idea. I just gave it. Okay. So your audience in the West, particularly in the international audience, busy, hectic, tired people, they give their attention of the ear and mind just to snatch as detectives to see relevant information only, right? So when you're pointing them, or rather when you're messing them with jungle of data, in your battle, you may fail. So give them the audience desire. Quick, explicit, clear, relevant data alone. The hard truth of this communication is they are not interested in how clever you are in doing this research. They are interested in what your research can do. It's all about your research, not about you. How clever, how brave, how expert you are in your field is irrelevant for them. What your research matters to them is the central, hard, and bitter truth. Keep that in mind. So if you look at the time management aspect, now in your written article, you have typically 3,000 plus words. But you are given a very little presentation time where you can speak nearly or less than 20 minutes. So that your article has 3,000 plus words, your verbal space is 1,800 if you just look at a typical calculation. So it's like, 1 to half. You have one full space there in your research article to write up. You have half the space of that in your hand to speak it out loud. If you just do this math, aim for 100 and 120 words per minute, clarity. You cannot simply read out your paper aloud. You must edit. You must take the gist and speak only the points of gist alone. This reminds me my days when I was first, I'm just coming out of the talk and I'm going to tell you a little bit of a boasting about myself. This was somewhere back in 2006, right? In 2006, it was a time which, I was thinking whether I'm to go on academia as a lecturer or whether I'm to go on to media as an announcer or rather a presenter or a host in a media company. So it was one of the leading private media companies in Sri Lanka who were willing to hire me, right? That was for their breakfast show running for 2 hours, right? Those days, the breakfast show was at a sort of a transition. If you could remember, when Kingsley Ratnayaka was doing the breakfast show, Surya Sirasa, right? And after Kingsley Ratnayaka, it was handed over to Sahan Rangwala and the team. And then it was after Ranwala that there was a chance for a new voice to come in. And I was among the top shortlisted candidates to get that opportunity, right? Those days, actually, if you could remember how Kingsley was speaking in the breakfast show, he had a lorry full of words to simply unload in a 1 minute's time. Can you remember how quickly and how fluently he was articulating all his ideas in a minute's time? And following his regime and then Sahan Rangwala's time, it was me who was in the spotlight. And I was in between choosing the breakfast show host in Sirasa or an academic in University of Maratua. So I happen to make the right judgment, or rather, I don't know, I do not have regrets on not choosing Sirasa instead of University of Maratua. I'm still feel myself esteemed because even the people who happen to be working with me in the field of media are still calling me sir. I do not like the very word sir in any honorable sense, but I do really like the very sense they indicate in it. They have a respect when they address me as Prasanna sir or whatever the name, right? It is because if I happen to be in media, there was a chance that I missed that sense of respect because I will be treated just as a speaker alone who is not relying on facts, research, and, on updating, right? So why did I tell this? Because when you are talking about your presentation skills, your writing skills, In academia, you have to be both a researcher, a research writer, and a research presenter. You are endowed with three particular skills. Dazun is asking about the salary scales. Yeah, I would have won a greater luxury if I happened to choose Sirasa. Then, yeah, I would have been a millionaire by now, and I would have been a spotlight media personnel by now, right? But I'm sure that I my politics will be nullified there in my media journey. If I happen to choose one of those media profiles, I have to be politically positive. I have to be politically positive in terms of the institute's mandate, but my personal politics should be nullified. But here in University of Porto, my personal politics have enough freedom. I can be on any political stance I do like. But if I choose a media role, I would have missed that legitimacy. So, yes, I could have earned a lot by going to media. I could have earned a lot of, let me say, a lot of popularity and lot of other benefits if I happen to choose Sirasa. But I'm still happy that the little popularity that I'm receiving, but with a bigger spectrum that I'm contributing to a much more constructivist, let me say, role that I'm performing right now. Now I'm addressing to 50 even researchers who will be changing this world in the next decade or ahead. If I happen to be in a media academy, or rather media, if I happen to be there, I'll be speaking to the entire country, but with diluted purpose, with diluted mission. But here, with a very fine-tuned essence, that I'm speaking to a different crowd, with a different vibe, with a different objective and different philosophy. I love where I am right now. Well, let's get back to the topic. What is it? 3,000 plus words you have got in your written article, and you have nearly half that to speak when you are communicating it to the research audience. So you have to keep in mind the logic that 100 to 120 words per minute. So in 1 second, you have to at least articulate 1+ words. That's the simple rule. If you're not that fluent, don't worry, because your presentation speaks not in your presentation, it's not only your words speak, but also lots of other modalities coming in to speak with you. You cannot, therefore, the simple principle that you have to understand here is you cannot simply read out your entire research paper in your presentation. You have to take the milestones, you have to take the snapshots, which are really, really strong, and you have to choose carefully them and speak in your presentation. So there is a lot of editing that you require in your research presentation. I'm back to the topic. Let's move on. So there is a philosophy called cut philosophy. You have to cut down a lot and retain a little, right? This time constraint, you have to make these difficult decisions. What are they? You know too much about your topic, it's a problem. Knowing too much about your topic creates your infield mentality, which contradicts perhaps with the outfield audience. Keep that in mind. Second thing is, it has a solution. Don't worry. What is the solution? You're going to cut content to save the audience cognitive load, so that to fit the outer field audience, their cognitive load, you have to cut. So what is the criteria of this information cut philosophy? If information does not directly support your main idea or thesis, cut it. See what you can cut. If any information that you choose is not directly supporting your main idea, now you cannot communicate the entire whole idea, but you are in your presentation to communicate the main idea, the thesis. If your main idea thesis is not directly supported by any information that you selected, simply cut them off. You don't need to take them because you have a time constraint in your presentation. But whatever you cut from your original decision of taking to the presentation, you can cut them from your original presentation. Now remember, even after your presentation slides, you can keep some of the backup slides. You know why? There is a session called Q&A where you can bring some of the cut and details that you originally thought of taking to the presentation, but you did not bring it to the original presentation. You have these backup slides to be used in your Q&A session. You have never thought of this before. Am I right? You can clearly identify what information you take, and you cut unnecessary and take the very necessary to the presentation. But those cut unedited stuff could be reserved as backup slides for your Q&A session. Did you get the point? Can I see with a response in your emotions? Did you get the point? So these little tactics are actually making your journey of presentation easy, right? So let's see. The cut philosophy is clear. Yes, you cut things, but you keep them reserved as backup slides to be used in Q&A session. Perhaps after your presentation, if the audience is really, really interested in you, they might be giving you much more time than the presentation time in your Q&A session. Yeah, that is a plus point. Keep those backup slides to be used whenever necessary. Yeah, let's move on. Don't dump data. Don't dump data. What is data dumping? You throw massive amounts of complex data at the audience without explanation or filter. Now remember, they are outfield. They are midfield or outfield. Typically, all the audience in a presentation are outfield. Treat them all as outfield. When you dump with lots of data without explanation or filtering, what happens? They are going to be mess themselves up in a bigger forest, looking for a particular tree, but they look at the entire forest. Don't dump data. So what is the defensive wall that you can use, right? This is a psychological defense mechanism used by nerves, because if I show them everything, you think often with many things and many data and lots of data in hand, you can simply amaze them. But actually, the result is your audience is going to be overwhelmed. They are not impressed. They are actually depressed by receiving lots of information on which you have no filter or explanation. So keep the defensive wall. You cut unnecessary data. You remain them for, backup slides. And you have a third set of data which you have in your files, but still you are using it as a defense if you need a second layer defensive mechanism. So quite simple, take only the data that are really, really strong and speaking in the support of your main findings or thesis, main idea. Well, now you engineering people must be knowing signal to noise ratio. SNR stands, if you put that in a formula, the power of the signal divided by the power of noise is actually the signal to noise ratio. The more noisy reduces the power of the signal. So keep this particular formula in your mind. Signal to noise ratio is really, really important. Why? Your signal is your main point, your thesis, your key findings. What is your noise? Unnecessary jargon, extra data, cluttered slides, rambling speech, and lots of your infield thinking, they appear as the noise. So if you keep in mind this signal to noise ratio, you should be knowing that you have to reduce the noise to make your signal much more effective and powerful, right? So reduce unnecessary jargon, extra data, cluttered slides, rambling speech, or any unnecessary in-field thinking. Take them to minimum so that your signal might powerfully project. Your goal is to maximize the signal and to minimize the noise. I wish you understood in your engineering mindset what I'm telling. Well, with that, let's move on. Research is a story. In your presentation, you are the storyteller. We are storytelling animals. Now, going beyond the slides, let me ask a little question from all of you. Are you a fan of stand-up comedies? If there is any fan of stand-up comedies, please give a thumbs up. We have 1. Is it the only one? 2, 3, 4. Okay. Okay. There are a few. Thank you. Have you guys ever watched the recent movie? Actually, not recent, about 3 years old, I think. There was an Australian movie from the Gen Zs that is on Standing Up for Sunny. Have you watched that? Have I got anyone in the audience who watched the movie Standing Up for Sunny? Have any of you got? Now you must be wondering, while preparing slides, while doing research on on my field, while taking the pre-academic term and all those first-year engineering matters, and taking the engineering minors in professional English, and while taking these postgraduate courses, and while doing my research, and while being this and that, do I have time to watch movies? Yes, I spare some time to watch movies, but they come after many, many, many filters. I hardly get a chance, but I don't know how you are. So if you have a chance, take your time to watch the movie Standing Up for Sunny, and there you will learn a lot about how to craft your story. It's not about research communication, it's about becoming a communicator in your real life, right? It's a wonderful romantic love story, but above all, that is a story of about communication, how communication can actually make, how could communication be fine-tuned and filtered. I'm not going to promote the movie. I love the very cast in it, particularly Sunny in it, right? And I love the main cast, the guy as well. So you can watch it if you are really, really interested in it. And if you are really interested, after taking time to watch the movie, and if you have anything to discuss on the movie, yes, we can have a different forum, perhaps later, with the movie. If we have time, we can have a time to watch the movie in a wide screen with me. Yes, probably. And we can take the movie into a discussion as well, because it's a wonderful, wonderful movie. To talk about romance, to talk about love, to talk about communication, to talk about the Gen Z aspirations, and to talk about life all in all. That's a wonderful movie, right? I'm sorry that I took all these things into the discussion, because at the end of the day, guys, research matters, but we are savoring a life. In savoring our life, we have to have something beyond research, something beyond data, something beyond scholarship. We have to have a little life, right? I'm sorry if I disturbed your feelings by bringing this idea of movie and all that. If I killed your time by taking that into the discussion, pardon me. I'm sorry. I'm a person not from STEM fields. I'm a person from humanities, so that my vibe is there. I'm sorry. Pardon me if I made any mistake by taking it. Right? Okay. Okay. We'll go ahead. Did I disturb by taking it to the discussion? Did I disturb your mentality? I'm sorry if I did so. No emotion is indicated. Yeah. If you do bring any emotion, I would love some of you say it's all right. Okay, thank you. At least one says it's all right. Okay, thank you. Some of you do love even. Okay, thank you. That relaxes me. That relaxes me because, I don't know whether you like it or not. Well, so telling your research as a story is the concern here. As I told you, humans are storytelling animals. We process information best when it follows a narrative. Our information is typically best articulated when we put it in a nice narrative. So, what is your narrative? Right? A narrative is like this. Now, when you're telling your story to an audience, your story has this flow. What is it? You have to set a setting, you have to create a setting, and then you have to put the problem, and then you have to put an action, and you have to put the action into a climax and resolution. If you put this in a simple graph between x and y axis, your setting is simply the setting, the x and y axis, telling what and why and who you are, right? And your problem is basically staring somewhere closer to the zero of y axis. In any point of x, you can begin. And when you put the problem, that is the initial conflict of your story, and then when you explain them the research, previous research, and your methodology and all that, that actually are coordinates between x and y, rising from the initial problem upward. And then when you bring your results, they actually reach the peaks of x and y coordinates going up in towards the y-axis. So we call it climax, the biggest point of explosion, or rather the biggest curious moment. And then after revealing your results, you come to resolution, which means you then start to reveal things later and making it relevant to the wider field, making it less in conflict. So quite simple. A storyline should be there when you bring your research into presentation. Setting, problem, action, climax, resolution. Your setting is your background, your problem is your research questions, your action is methodology, your climax, or rather the peak point of your story, is your results, and your resolution is your conclusion. So what is highlighted on top is the narrative signpost. What is highlighted bottom is your research signpost. So if you can simultaneously narrate your story with a storyline, your research is going to pitch perfect so that your audience will get the idea nicely. Did you get the idea I happen to explore here? Can I have a response? Jeff, it says yes. Thank you. So let's move on. IMRAD versus narrative flow. Now I'm getting that storyline idea together with the idea of research basics, IMRAD structure, the hourglass, upside down hourglass structure, introduction, methods, results, and discussion, right? Now, in a IMRAD structure where the research is typically based on, these things come into play. You have to keep the IMRAD structure in the backdrop, but narrative logic to connecting these IMRAD structures, right? So what happens? Structurally, there are three things that you have to worry about, because there are two structures coming into your mind when you plot your story into a presentation. First thing is your IMRAD, research genre features. I am ready. And in your speechcraft, you have to keep in mind the narrative. You are telling a story. So the focus is this. You, in your IMRAD structure, you have to fill the boxes of the format. What is introduction, what's methods, results, and discussion. You have to fill those big boxes. But in the narrative, what you have to do is you have to connect the dots, these boxes, with the story of discovery. So you bring introduction, methods, results, and discussion true, but you tell it as if you are the storyteller of your new discovery. So it's not a strange thing. In introduction, methods, and results, discussion, and conclusion sections, you narrate your story of introduction, methods, results, and discussion in a discovery teller, story of a discovery. And there is a risk involved in this. What is it? The IMRAD structure actually creates a boring, disjointed list. Introduction, starting with the thesis and general introduction, and then telling the methodology, results, discussion, they are disconnected segments. But in a narrative, you have to ensure that they are connected. In this making connection, you have to actually think seriously about the construct. You need to bring more thought to narrate it, connecting the IMRAD boxes together. But there is a huge benefit of connecting these two. What's it? You still respect the standard expected format of IMRAD. At the same time, when you put it in a narrative of discovery storyteller, you make it engaging, memorable, logical story that is understood by your outfield members in the audience. I wish you got the point. You have to struggle between IMRAD and the narrative, but if you make a real effort on harnessing the dots, harnessing the disconnected dots with the narrative storyline, your discovery speech, your discovery narration, your discovery presentation is going to be really, really effective. Well, so in this storytelling, there are mechanics that are helpful. Don't just say and then first, then second, and third. Use a logic drive in your presentation forward. How? The so, that is about the consequence. We had this specific problem, so we decided to perform this specific test. So make a cause-effect relationship with so. The other thing is you have to make it upside down, cause and effect, effect and cause. Because rationale and consequential rationale. What's it? We chose their particular method because it is account for variable X. Now, in your research narration, you do not need to say the method separately and discussion separately. So you can say, when you're choosing a particular methodology, you have to justify it with a rationale statement in your speech, in your narrative. Oh yes, we choose it because of this, and so on. These transition words like therefore, consequently, for this reason, as a result, you can get a bulk of those terminology if you refer to the material we published there. Using those transitions, managing between consequence and rationale, the so and the because, cause and effect relationship statements, you can actually make your narrative much more engaging with a logical flow in place. And one of the typical critical places in your story is thesis statement. What is a thesis statement? Look at the definition. It is a single sentence stating the main point or outcome of your research. So you, at the beginning or somewhere at the beginning, should start with this thesis in which you actually state your main point or outcome of your research. Keep it spotlighted at the very onset. Where should you place it? Ideally, near the beginning, locate your thesis statement, main point. or outcome of your research. The benefit is it guides the audience with a North Star, which means a focus to test your audience against throughout the talk. Now, you told the spotlighted thesis statement at the beginning, and it's supporting you because audience first starts with what you found as the spotlight significant thing. And through that curious main thesis, you can narrate the whole story, connecting the dots. Say, for example, we argue that increased freedom is strongly related to improvements in happiness over time. Now, this is a humanities example. Now, before you start delineating, revealing your whole research, you start with your outcome first, your main point first, and tell that in this presentation, I argue that to reach this destination, I followed through these lines. So give the spotlight to your main finding at the beginning. We call it thesis statement. And from thesis statement, reflect back how you reach that thesis outcome, right? Well, you have to distinguish between what you present, whether it is a hypothesis or a thesis. You know the difference between thesis and hypothesis, right? It depends on your point of presentation. If you are done with your research and you are revealing the outcomes, it is a thesis presentation. You bring them thesis and outcome. If you are doing a presentation defense, presentation proposal, or rather progress defense, your research is not yet fully done. So you are presenting hypothesis, not thesis. So what you have to do? When you are doing the thesis presentation, which appears at the end of your research, you have the answer. Your thesis, you can state clearly, right? But when you are doing an incomplete research, when you're presenting hypothesis, you have a predicted answer. You have a predicted thesis, right? In that case, you can never say, I will analyze, I will show. You have to hedge it a little, right? Well, distinguishing between whether you are presenting the thesis or hypothesis is really, really important. When you present the thesis, you can use very strong thesis at the beginning, state it clearly. But when you are presenting the hypothesis, remember that you do have a predicted answer, therefore you have to hedge it a little. Well, what is the introduction strategy? Now keep in mind the outfield, can you remember outfield? The people who are not known to your study much. For audiences with mixed knowledge, look at this funnel approach. We call this the funnel approach. You start with self-intro. You brief and you act like a human telling what and who you are doing. I'm Prasanna Ratnayaka. I'm taking an example. I'm Prasanna Ratnayaka here to read through humanities and reading research to help you all researchers with tactics that you never looked at, but I happen to be looking at on how your research could be better right and how it could be better presented. So you give yourself introduction in your presentation first. And then you tell the context. You are going to say something about real world because you are addressing to the outfield, right? So it is the shared ground. So come from the real world to the specific world you are functioning. Say, for example, I would say, as a researcher, when I reveal my context, I would say, as a researcher, it's the research that you all do know. Research is done to actually help develop the knowledge industry. So if you are done with your research, your knowledge is new, and you are going to point your knowledge in a bigger industry repository of knowledge. To place your knowledge in the bigger industry, you should know what matters most in your knowledge communication. You see, now we are coming little by little to me or your not shared in field. In communicating research, you have to understand that you are expert in field of research of your own field, but you are not yet a field researcher expert in how to write your research to any audience. So distinguish the gap, you see? So this is how you start with the self-intro and then set your context, and then you give them your problem. And you're giving them your problem, making it their problem as well, telling that this is the research and there where the gap exists. Yes, I'm going to fill this gap, so come and help me filling that gap. That is where you fill the problem. And then with the problem, you give them expectations on what areas of the big problem that you're going to resolve. That is specific questions that you're going to address. And then give an outline. So this is all about the introduction of your presentation. You start with a self-introduction, you set the context, and then you reveal the gap you are going to fill, which is the problem, and then you reveal them a bit of your aims, and then you give the outline of your presentation. Got it? So this is how you have to begin in your presentation. Have you got any question to ask about the presentation introduction? Now, do not mess with introduction of your research or research article or thesis. This is the introduction of your presentation. Any questions, my dear friends? I'm happy that I'm halfway through the presentation. No interruption came today. Happy Saturday. Any questions, my dear friends? If you don't have any question, I can move ahead if you give me a thumbs up. Yes, let's go ahead. Thank you. But it seems there is a question coming in. Let me see what it is. Dasun, wonderful and wonderfully relevant question. If research is partly completed, should we frame the talk more as a hypothesis or thesis? Still, you have to frame it as hypothesis, but much more strongly towards the thesis. Now, this is not a clear-cut point between 0 and 1, right? If 0 is hypothesis and if 1 is thesis, you have to find a place between 0.1 to 0.9, right? But still, without indicating that it is thesis, but you can indicate that your thesis is so soon to reach. So you can strongly your hypothesis could be strongly what we call garnished, or rather strongly emphasized therein. Dasun, did I answer your question or do I need to elaborate further? Say, for example, yes, quite simple. Now you say your data are indicating a very big shot finding that is going to happen in the industry. But you are not yet reached the thesis because there is, 75% of data are analyzed, but 25% is remaining. But still, you can spotlight on your thesis, telling that a big breakthrough is on the spot. But still, we are navigating through data whether this snapshot, this big spotlight is really, really viable through our data. We are assured by now throughout 75% of the analysis that we are there. Did you get it? So it's hypothesis true, but nearing the thesis. Thank you. Let's move on. Starting importance. It's stating the importance. Now, your audience needs a reason to listen. Why your research matters? Because it matters to you. You are going to make it matter to the outfield people as well, right? You can start with general information and specific importance, general importance and specific importance aspects as well. Generally, you have to say, this field matters to the world generally because this. Say, for example, you will start with climate change is affecting the food security. And you can then jump to the specific importance, how no one has tested this specific protein in drought conditions. Now see, food security is a concern relevant for everyone. So you are addressing the outfield and you are bringing them into the midfield, telling that among food security, testing on a particular protein in drought conditions is important. You are inviting the outfield to the midfield, but from stating general importance first and then specific importance next. And then you are inviting them to the infield little by little throughout your presentation. So you see that dealing with an outfield audience, you are navigating with them through outfield to midfield and infield. That is your mission in your presentation. So this is how you have to state your importance, starting general importance to specific importance. The next thing is the outline, which is part of the introduction. In your outline, you know the function of outlining is giving them a roadmap. Tells the audience where you are going, right? When you tell this, where we are going from where to where, it reduces the anxiety of the readers because they are outfielders and they should know why the hell that they are listening to you. If you indicate it at the beginning, it helps them to actually clearly move with you in your navigation from outfield to the infield. And remember, timing is where you're going to time it out. After the introduction, right? Before you come to the deep content, right? Within the first 25% of your presentation, you have to spot it, but you do not need to spend a lot of time on revealing the roadmap. Just in a very sensitive, very effective, maybe mind map, maybe a arrow map with sensible information incorporated would enough. Perhaps sometimes you don't need to talk about the outline, just showing it up and giving just 1 or 2 words on your outline is enough. Sometimes people hang around the outline telling that I'm going to tell this and that and the next. You waste your time. Don't do that, right? Don't just list method results conclusion. You know, in your roadmap, don't just list as you usually does as method results discussion. Give a hint of the logical flow, right? So it's about revealing your roadmap in your introduction. Now you are coming to the body of your presentation, right? There are 2 standards, type A and type B. The first standard could be you first give them research question 1, research question 2, research question 3 in an order at the beginning, and then you go to methods and results. But this standard actually, audience needs lots of cognitive load there because they have to remember your research questions. You are switching between research question 1 to 3 time to time. So they are burdened a lot. But if you choose the type B, there what happens? We move from research question to question. We take the question 1 and we tell how we address that in our methodology and what are the results you gained for research question 1. Then you move to research question 2 and you reveal the method and result. You see, the audience is put in much more easier to understand. I think type B is much more effective. But in certain cases, if your particular presentation guidelines tell type A, you have to follow that, but still keep in mind that type B is also positive, and in which type B iterative sequence is actually the easier way for your reader to follow. The outfield audience to follow is iterative procedure. Well, deep background strategy. Outfielders need background, but too much at the start bores the infielders. Now remember, you are dealing with infield and outfield. Too much background might make the things boring for the infielders. So you have to have a better balance. The solution is split the background. How? Give a basic real world background, which is a hook that appeals to everyone. That is in the intro, right? And in the outline, you show the roadmap so that even the insiders, infielders, even the outfielders do know from where you are moving. And in the body start, give a deep background or theory just before the method section. Before the method section, in the background, you can give a deep background or rather theory rich background before the method section when you start the body. So there where you use a strategy to retain both your infielders and outfielders together in your narrative. So we are then coming to the end section of your presentation, the conclusion. What you should do there. You know, when you're moving with time, when you're coming to the end of the time, all of you are going to be panicked. And in this panic, you simply stop. Do not ever let it happen. Do plan it properly, take time and do rehearse, because your research story matters. Perhaps those outfielders coming in to listen to your presentation do not come there after reading your research or its abstract. So it's your duty in your 20 minutes or whatever the time given to you to ensure that your idea is properly communicated. So finish strong is a key principle in your presentation. Conclusion is the most important point where all of you typically miss, right? So in your concluding, you have to come into summary. You have to restate the research question and the answer you reach. That's a summary. And you have to indicate that you function in an honest, authentic background with certain limitations. You have to indicate the weaknesses, sample sizes, and be honest in that sense. And you have to connect, as you did in conclusion, your present research with the future, what should come next. Because you're feeding a research context where you start with the research gap, you fill something, and you cannot fill the entire thing alone. You invite others to fill the rest of the story. And remember that your conclusion should go with the final message, take home message, what you should take home. Return to the real world importance of your research. So this is how you can finish strong in your conclusion with a summary of research question and the answer, indicating your limitations with connecting dots from research where it should be leading further with the final take-home message with real-world importance of your research. So that is how you should negotiate your presentation in a research communication instance. The reality loop is this. You start in the real world, you end in the real world. You switch between real and unreal worlds because infielders and outfielders both are involved there. The concept is this. You connect abstract data back to reality to give it meaning. Now, you start with something real world understands, and in your narrative towards the mid, you bring data, and with those data, you come into the in-field discussion, and you refer them back to the real world at the end. This reality loop should be maintained. So you can use the visuals and other typical modalities available in presentations. real world photos, real world application, and real world appealing modalities actually should be there in both your introduction and conclusion. There where you actually connect this loop of real world. There is something coming in. Subhashini asks, I have a question regarding the PhD proposal and progress presentations 1, 2, 3 for the proposal presentation. Well, Subhashini, let me answer this question towards the end of the presentation. Would that be all right?
Yes, sir. It's okay, sir.
Okay.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Okay. So in the introduction and in your conclusion, these real world scenarios and real world photographs, real world, what we call real world connecting modalities should be taken into your slides, right? Intro and conclusion, because these are the two ends where you connect the real world. And in the mid, you can take the scientific lab jargon, right? Ensure the conclusion explicitly answers the question you posed in the intro. The very connecting dot is, in the introduction, you set a question, and in your conclusion, you should show your audience that you answered the question that you set through your research. So that is how you can connect the reality loop in your research story. Well, title design. Your title is your first advertisement, remember. We discussed it last session as well. Your title matters, and your title, you should design it to ensure that you crystal clear craft everything, right? The mistakes that you do is, long jargon heavy titles might actually disrupt your first advertisement. Instead, go for a fix. Shorten it, use a subtitle for details. You see, the semicolon effect could be used. Main title and subtitle deviation with a colon in the center, with semicolon in the center. You see, these colons and semicolons do a lot. So design title design is really, really important in your case. And script and notes. Now, you all might be, or rather some of you might be spontaneous speakers like me. You just need the slides and your story in your mind. And when the slides come in, your story surfaces. But don't be relying much on that method. I'm advising you. Writing a script and practicing is always good and is always great, because sometimes there comes instances where you miss even the visual aids. Sometimes I can still remember everything was perfect, but all of a sudden there came a electricity break where I had to keep myself without lights, without visual aids, but with my script alone. So if you have a script, it will tell you signposts where you should bring the whole idea into the story. So always be prepared for everything, right? Prepared for voice alone act to voice plus modalities plus multimedia and everything, right? Okay. So writing a script is really important because it ensures logical tightness and correct grammar, right? Particularly if you are checking with the time, writing a script is really, really important. If you write a story, you are developing your narrative. Though you are going to use it or not is a different matter. Use a script and write a script and write it by yourself. Then you know the whole story before you perform it, right? The cons of writing a script is, if you are going to write a script and read it out, actually it kills your engagement with the audience. You have to be a storyteller, not a newsreader, not a script reader, right? Don't be like a robot, be like a live person who engages with the audience. Writing a script is a must with which you narrate your story and you Stick yourself to the timing constraints, but still you do not try to read the script out loud. The strategy is this: write script to check your logic and do not read it. Create a bullet point notes together with the script. So you indicate script and then you develop it into a bullet point note and you keep both. Your script is there in your pocket or in your file, and at the same time, on top of it, you have the bullet point notes. So you can simply look at the bullet point notes and you can remember the story script you have written and you can do the speech nicely. And in case, if you lose any of the points, you can simply switch to the script. It's a safety net. You see? Well, never ever lose a chance of having a script, but never ever rely reading a script out loud. You got the point, I wish. So, what language can ensure your clarity? What time is it? It's yet 8 minutes to 10. Yes. What language makes your presentation clear enough? Your goal is maximum understanding for diverse audience. You are getting the outfielders into the field and you are trying to locate them in infield, right? So we advise you to replace your terminology with the simplest word. Simplest word in the sense, if you have a typically strong scientific word like utilize in your presentation slide, it's okay. But when you articulate, when you read it out, you can say use in the place of utilize, you see? And replace simplest words as much as possible. And the first thing is, whenever you get a chance, whenever there is a technical term or a theory coming in, define, explain it in the simplest possible way, maybe with an example or maybe with a real definition comes in simplest language possible. And the third principle is for clarity is, if a difficult word is not essential, remove it. You see, lots of difficult and jargonic words are there, and you feel like it's not really essential, remove it, because we are simply using not only the slide details, but also your words. And you are doing a sort of a bridging between outfielders, inviting them into infield, in which difficult words actually disrupt this journey. So keep them aside. So that is how you have to manipulate language for clarity. And a simple insight about active and passive voice in your presentation. Actually, the old style is passive, objective they are, but they distance you from the research. But on the other hand, active voice style in a presentation is the most efficient way. You are directly connecting everything, and which is the common field, STEM, specific, tradition. And holding nuance, or rather reducing uncertainty. Science is real. Now, your investigation could be challenged in a future investigation. So that science is all about uncertainty. None of your findings are 100% certain, right? And to protect your credibility of your finding, of your research, you can use language. In points where strong things are indicated, you can demonstrate them with words like the results demonstrate, it is certain that, they are robustly speaking, and so on. And if you actually reduce the certainty of your result, you can do it with language once again. Results indicate, not demonstrate. This time it's indicate. It is likely that you are hedging your statement. And you can, if there are certain things which are possible, you can indicate them softly. The results suggest that. It is conceivable through this data that, so you are indicating that. Don't overstate your results, right? Use nuance to be precise. Language is a way that you can connect these emphasis, either strong, moderate, or soft. And signposting is really, really important. Now, there has to be a flow between slides, flow between your narrative, and flow between your IMRAD structure. In this case, signposting is really important. There are visual signpostings as well as verbal signpostings. How can you do that? Tell your audience exactly where you are going. Don't let them get lost. When you're talking about a particular thing, you have to refer to both narration as well as the IMRAD structure. Now look at methodology, how I did it. When you say methodology, it's about the IMRAD structure. And when you go to the narration, how I did it, you see? So make sure when you're transiting between slides and those sections, they are smoothly connected, right? So you can indicate them through verbal phrases like moving from methods to the data, right? So you can use slide transitions to indicate that, right? Method with a distinct color and results with a distinct color. Maybe there is a highlighting bold statement on top of the slide telling that results continued, which actually avoids disruptions between what is this slide and what this guy is speaking, right? It gives the audience a mental break and they can have a break and reset their attention back to where you are talking about. I think the idea is clear and let's move on. And in this very exercise, logical connectors are also really important. You are not only telling your story, but also you are guiding your readers' thinking process as well, your audience, your listeners' thinking process. For that, you can use the cause and effect method. Therefore, consequently, as a result, in consequence of this, so use those logical connectors. And if you want to emphasize on the intention in order to attain the reason we did this, you provide your intention. And if you want to contrast, you can say, however, on the other hand, you see, avoid using often, then, now, thirdly, first, and so on. Instead of using that, use logical connectors, indicating cause and effect, intention, and contrast. They smoothly navigate and help your outfielders little by little coming into the infield. This slide design rule is the universal rule, but still you have to adopt these rules together with the rules of the presentation guidelines given by your presenters, right? Presenter organizers. 177 rule is a universal research finding. What is it? Don't let your presentations text heavy, right? Audience needs to read, audience needs time to listen, and of course to see. So in a one idea, in one slide. Maximum 7 lines. In one line, maximum 7 words. Quite simple. This is identified as the optimal slide content with regard to facts, text, and words. An animation strategy. Some of you do not typically use animation because you are not going to simply make a gaudy presentation, but to ensure that you are crystal clear, communicate your idea. But animation is not for fun. Animation should be used to control the flow of information. So use builds. What are they? Bullet points. When there are bullet points, let them come one by one if possible, right? Or else in your story narration, you move along the bullet points one after the other, right? And you know why? Because it stops the audience from reading, instead listening to you while looking at what slide says. Because it keeps the focus on what you're saying right now with your slide, connecting them together. And the tip I have to give here is simple effects like appear and fade is quite enough. But bouncing effects, things like that, are not preferable in a science presentation. So when it comes to data visualization and trends, when you're describing particular charts, use vivid verbs and adverbs. What are they? If you indicate directions up, down, flat, you see, they can be indicated through verbs. The data rose, or rather the trend rose, has increased, surged, skipped, spiked. They indicate the upward trends, and downward trends fell, dropped, declined, plummeted, and flat trend stabilized, leveled off, and so on. And to indicate those verbs, you can get the help of adverbs as well. Rapidly, gradually, suddenly, dramatically, and so on. So use those verbs as well as adverbs, indicating direction and the quality of the very movement using adverbs. Never forget these aspects. And when you are delivering, you typically caught up in the robot trap. What is the trap? They try to be serious as scientists. They aggregate, they implant themselves with a flat voice, with less expression, hiding behind the podium, and hiding behind the slides. Don't do that. Be yourself. Be the researcher, be the narrator, be the storyteller, and be the lead. Good researchers are engaged, they are curious, they are adventurous, and they actually jump from slide to speech to the audience questioning to audience gestures and back to surprises and so on. Don't hide your enthusiasm. Present your natural energy. Be a presenter, be the researcher. Don't be a serious scientist who sits and just caught yourself into the robot trap. And nervousness. If I invite you to raise your hands, those who are feeling nervous in presentations, you might hide yourself telling that you are not nervous. But let me tell you, even the best speaker in the world, the best presenter in the world should have a sense of nervousness to make your presentation successful. Even now at this very moment, I feel a bit of a nervousness, and I keep it as part of adrenaline, the hormone, to ensure the energy, right? Reframe your feeling of nervousness to an enthusiasm. Your shaking hands and rapid heartbeats are energy sources. Don't try to suppress them. Redirect the energy into louder voice, hand gestures, and take your stage, your point. In the podium, if you do not feel like comfortable, if you have a hands-free or rather a movable mic, why don't you come on the stage wherever necessary? Be the player of the scene. Don't ever be caught up behind podium, behind slides, and all that. And if you feel like your hands are nervously shaking, show them these shaky feelings and show them your shaky hands. Don't worry. When you handle with the shaky hands, showing them, you show confidence in your story. You see? So never ever be free of nervousness. Have some nervous feeling and make use them as energy, converting that into your presentation strength. And after the presentation, the Q&A. I'm reminding you once again, it's not an oral exam, it's not a final point, it's not a test. People ask questions because they are interested in your research. They ask questions because there are points that they want to clarify, they want to understand the full story. They ask questions not to trap you, but to get their dots connected. You see? take Q&A session in such vibe, not as, the toxic vibe where you consider, oh my God, this guy is annoying me. Don't take it in that sense, right? Keep it as a feedback loop to improve your research. Welcome them. My typical way is after my presentation, if lots of people come with questions, that's my pleasure because that tells me how well I did it or where I went wrong. And if I had a chance of missing some information in Q&A, I can fill the gaps that I left in my presentation. So take it as again an opportunity, a golden opportunity. And remember, you have backup slides to be used in oral Q&A session. Can you remember? Use them in Q&A session. You can give it a light. Yes. And some tactics for you to deal with Q&A. Remember that you don't understand, you don't need to answer everything perfectly immediately, and you are not supposed to answer everything, right? But you are supposed to respond to everything. Keep in mind that. If you don't understand, ask them to explain, right? So you can say, yes, I comprehend your question in such a way. So you are asking this. If I am wrong, ensure that you clear it. You can give your questioner to clarify it further. Don't know. If you don't know a fact, be honest. So just tell I don't know, right? But that's a great point. I will check. You can say, yes, that very point that you raised was not a concern in my data, but let me revisit that and fine tune, keeping that thing also in my mind. I don't know for the time being whether what you said is in effect in my analysis. You can say, admit it, irrelevant. If there is any irrelevant this question comes in, you can simply flag it as irrelevant, right? You can flag it like this, yes, what you pointed out is quite relevant in this big topic, but in my scope of the study, I did not really look at that. It is outside of the scope, right? But I think it's quite significant to discuss. Let us take them in my limitation slide. You can say, right? If it is not a question, often thank them for the comments they make. So these tactics will certainly ensure any gap filling opportunity for you to fill during your Q&A session. So we are coming to the conclusion, summary and key takeaways. The biggest thing in your presentation is your mindset. It's communication, it's a feedback opportunity, it's a golden opportunity for you to get some of your viewers, outsiders know about what you're doing. Remember, it's not a performance. You have to do a collaboration between you and your panel of judges and the audience. It's not a just judgment. It's a collaboration of all three parties involved. Remember the narrative flow and, of course, the real IMRAD structure. Be simple, active, and nuanced. Don't be an actor, be yourself. Use energy, control the sides, control your emotions, control body and postures. Q&A session, a wonderful point for you to get your backup slides into Surface, and of course for you to fill any gaps that you happen to have in your presentation delivery, right? Improve your work. Good luck with your presentation. That's my last word to say. Now let us go back to the question. Now, Subhashini, can you tell me in words? I understood your question, but can you tell in words for the others to understand what your question is? I will answer it in a snapshot. Your question is regarding PhD proposal and progress presentation, right? So you ask for proposal presentation, should we cover only the basic and key literature related to our research problem without going into much detail? And in the progress presentation, are we to expect to present more detail? Now, the answer for your question, Subhashini, yes. At the proposal level, you navigate only the key, what we call the key textbooks and key trendy citations. There you have very little to explore from research. But when you come to Defense 1, maybe you are after a literature review episode. So you have to bring back those signposts that you can say the key text and then its significant milestones it evolved through. So in each progress, you have to make a success from your proposal. But you don't need to repeat everything everywhere. You can jump to the most highlighting trends in your navigation in each progress presentation. So you ask as a last question, more detailed and in-depth literature review covering more studies and critical analysis. I think in progress presentation at one point, it depends on where you are in your research. If you are just doing the literature review alone, you have to strongly indicate your literature review findings. And if you have passed from literature review and if you are at a point of fine-tuning or rather refreshing your data collection tools, you have to give light to that aspect as well, in addition to your literature review, right? So your emphasis on facts depends on in which level you are in. Depending on the level you are in, you have to bring it to the surface. So that's my answer. Subhashini, if I did not answer your question properly, you can raise it again. And I'm waiting for you all to ask questions. Friends, did I waste your time today? Just ask my question, answer my question. Did I give you any insight or any transition of your way of thinking at presentation? Any good hints, any good advices on how to present your write-up research in a presentation? Did I make any input? Let me switch on my camera so that you know that I'm here, right? Yes. Risma admits that it was very useful, and Dazun also says informative. Okay. Any questions, my dear friends, to take into discussion? I'm inviting you with all these now. Somebody wants to speak, right?
I have a small question.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, regarding so you mentioned that in the Q&A we can use our backup slide. What exactly did you mean by the backup slides?
Now, backup slides are typically, I told you, now when you take, let me say, extracts from your big research paper to your presentation slides have a limit, right? And you take extracts from your big research paper, and to fit into the slides requirement and the time of the presentation, you filter them further, right? And take them. And from your extracts, you have something that you did not added to the slides, but still you have extracted them from the main research article. So you can keep them as backup slides. In Q&A session, if you want any of references to be made, you can take them back onto the surface. That's the idea I told Risma.
Okay, sir. Understood. Thank you very much, sir, for that.
Okay, you're welcome. Any question further? Yes,
Sir,
Subhashini.
for presenting slides, can we add ChatGPT generated images also? Is it okay, sir?
Now, when it
Some
comes
kind
to,
of things we can't.
yes, you have to, and you can take, you can take published images, generative AI images, or any image, but everywhere when you take any image, you have to give citation to those images from where it is generated, from where you have taken. That citing is a must. That is typically appraised, or rather, regarded in scientific presentations. Acknowledge from where you take it. Danisha? Yes, call.
Excuse me, sir. Yeah, actually, speaking of AI, I have another question to be raised. Is it okay if I ask that question in this forum?
All right, go ahead. Yeah.
So this is regarding Turnitin detection of AI. So now, when it comes to a manuscript, even if we acknowledge the fact that we have used generative AI for language editing, but still it will be reflected in Turnitin AI detection. So will that be an issue from journal's point of view?
Well, that highly depends on what your journal respects. But one more advice. Now, I told you the final craft that you produce as your research paper should be your authorship. It should be your penmanship, not the ChatGPT's. So when you take, now forget about the whole example of taking that you simply copied the ChatGPT's response to your article and it is flagged as generative AI written. And see, among the many sentences that you have written by yourself, perhaps those are also reflected or flagged as Turnitin as AI written. So we have to keep in mind that it's via an algorithm that Turnitin traces what sounds like generative AI articulation and what sounds like non-generative AI articulation. Now, when you and me deal much with generative AI in our writing, probably our writing is also shaped to be like generative AI writing. So this is actually a risk as well as an opportunity. So what you can do is, whenever you get a bit of a citation or rather flagging from Turnitin that this is AI written like, what you can do is you can make use of the strategies that we taught you with maybe bit of a syntax re-engineering, with bit of synonym re-engineering, and with bit of what we call reduction of frequently used what we call terminology. You can address that whole thing. That is one of the advices that I can give you. And on top of that, just acknowledging that you use ChatGPT as a language editor is not enough. You have to acknowledge them that in your acknowledgement, you have to say ChatGPT support is used to language editing, but in the last product of this synthesis, my authorship has been consistently maintained. That statement should be there and you should be responsible for that, which means you use ChatGPT true, but at the same time, you override the ChatGPT's thing with your authorship and you are responsible for that. Such a strong statement actually is required in your acknowledgement so that if anything is cited by the, if anything is flagged by the Turnitin as generative AI, with your acknowledgement, you take the responsibility that you override it. And if you are authentically taking that responsibility, the journal will respect to your authenticity over what ChatGPT or rather what Turnitin said. So that's my answer for that, Danisha.
Thank you, sir.
Any questions, my dear friends? Now take time to review the submission that I uploaded this morning. And your submission can be something on what you are really doing right now, or any something that you hypothetically craft. But the one thing that you have to keep in mind is it should be the same thing that you are referring in title, in the abstract, and in the conclusion, as well as when you are doing 1 minute presentation of the whole thing, it should be the same thing, right? This 1 minute presentation is a later thing which we take live, but write up, the submission should be done within the week ahead. You can first evaluate, or rather review, the assignment given, and then you can come up with any questions if you have on Thursday night. That is regarding actually the presentation thing. But on any query related to the updated, already uploaded assignment, you can refer to the document uploaded and you can ask any question on WhatsApp. Now, I need to acknowledge you that, I'm working with voice-only mobile phone these days. It's because of a shield that I require from my end. I will get just one time a day chance to respond to your WhatsApp requests, maybe just one in one of the windows of my day's routine. I'll be responding to them through WhatsApp web. So just wait patiently until I respond to your queries if you happen to raise any query on WhatsApp mode. So any questions further? If not, we can wind up the session half an hour early. It's one slide, Binura. One slide. I don't know how you're going to do it. You don't even know, right? Be careful. In 1 minute thesis, in 3 minute thesis even, it's just one or couple of slides, but here it's one slide. Think of, it's not a big deal. You can do it. First do the writing draft, then think of how to get the slide involved. I'm sure I did not waste your time in this morning. I happen to help you invest your time usefully. Thank you very much for the responses and feedback you were giving. Get ready for your presentation and submission. And those who were late in submitting any of the assignments except for the workshop thing, I'll be giving them a little window after this submissions deadline for you to submit again. Can you upload a sample slide? I am not going to upload any sample slide, but I'll be giving you some clues on it, right? Well, thank you very much, friends. Then let us meet this Thursday with any issues that you have and with preparations for Saturday thing. Let us try our best to meet next Saturday live in FGS so that we can have a little fellowship and we can meet each other. And I would love to see you all, right? And you will see there when I meet with you how big I am, right? Okay, good luck with you all. See you all with spirit next Thursday and Saturday as well. Good luck, guys.